So what is the anarchy? I mean, it's a pretty generic term. Well, what it was a civil war in England in the early 12th century. So King Henry I of England is dead, and his only son, William Adelin, died on his way to England on a ship from Normandy. Now this throws the country into a succession crisis. Henry wanted his daughter Matilda to be queen after he died, but many of the English barons and nobility didn't agree with him. And when Henry died, his nephew, Stephen of Blois, seized the opportunity to seize the crown for himself, and was crowned in late 1135. But actually, before Henry had died, Stephen had sworn loyalty to Matilda and her succession, which means that now he'd reneged on this. He was able to do this because he had support from both the church and many of the English barons, who felt that the idea of a queen leading them wasn't what they wanted. They wanted to have a king leading them, mostly down to the somewhat sexist attitudes at the time. In fact, Stephen's brother was actually the Bishop of Winchester, and so the support of the church was definitely secured. But when Stephen was crowned, his reign ushered in a period of unrest, heralded by a breakdown in the usual law and order of the country. Hence, this period is known today as the Anarchy. Stephen ruled ineffectively, and many nobles were able to take advantage of this. Most notably, the robber barons of the period were able to build castles and rule their own people in draconian ways, enriching themselves at the cost of maintaining the classical English law. But in this time period, Matilda had not remained idle. She still had a claim to the English crown, and she very much intended to press it. She garnered the support of her uncle, King David I of Scotland, her half-brother, Robert of Gloucester, and finally her husband, Geoffrey of Anjou. And in 1139, they invaded. They actually managed to take over southwest England, but Stephen did retain his power base in the southeast. In the north, however, many of the barons were quite happy to watch from the sidelines. They wanted to maintain peace in their lands and grow prosperous because they didn't really have a stake in this conflict. In 1141, one of the most important battles of the Anarchy was the Battle of Lincoln. Stephen's army was besieging Lincoln Castle, but it was outmaneuvered and outnumbered by Matilda's forces. So the whole army was surrounded, and Stephen was captured and then imprisoned at Bristol. Whilst Stephen was in prison, Matilda wanted to work quickly and get crowned as queen, so she looked to London, where the royals of England were crowned in Westminster Abbey. However, the people of London were opposed to this, so she did not become the Queen of England. She didn't manage to get crowned, but she did gain the title Lady of the English. But, much to her dismay, a year later, Stephen was able to escape, and he took up the fight again. And for many years they continued battling, but neither side could really gain an advantage. The conflict was a stalemate. And it was now Stephen's turn to almost win the conflict, because he trapped Matilda and her army at Oxford. They were forced to retreat to Oxford Castle, and Stephen laid siege. He planned to starve her out, and then secure his kingship, but she managed to escape from the town one night. And as it was very snowy outside, she was dressed in all white, and so the army that was besieging Oxford was unable to see her escape. So she escaped across the Thames and managed to rejoin some of her other forces. And actually just the next day the castle surrendered, probably because it no longer contained Matilda. In 1148, Matilda returned to Normandy after many years of attritional warfare. And there she called on her son, Henry Plantagenet, to support her claim to the English crown. Though she would never win the crown for herself, she would ensure that her son Henry would sit on it once Stephen had died. And actually this was signed by Stephen in the Treaty of Wallingford, which stipulated that Henry was to be his heir. And in 1154, Stephen actually died, and so Henry succeeded as Henry II, and he was the first of the Plantagenet kings of England. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help the channel, and subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any content. I will see you in the next video.